As we wander around the university, we get lots of corridor chat and hear lots of quotes that online learning does not work. Anyone come across a chat? Anyone ever heard someone say that around the place? Yeah?
Less now than they used to do.
Less now than they used to. That's a worry. It's like converting people. So basically, why doesn't it work? I think at the forum before last, there was some feedback from students about why we're doing this online. We don't want to do it online. So I want to discuss today what sort of comments do people make, and what can we do about it? So there are some of the kind of stuff that's said, but I've actually got some actual quotes from students and from staff that I've collected in the last couple of weeks. It was a quote from a student which was, "If I wanted to study by correspondence, I would have gone to UNE." That's kind of a classic comment. Another one I picked up, I'm not sure where from, "MOOCs offer online for free, so why should I pay to come to the UWS?" Okay, so. And then another one I picked up, I'm not sure the actual people themselves, I'm not sure the people themselves wrote this, but "I want to see the UWS stars perform. I saw the billboards, where are James and Roy?" There's another one which is, "Don't give me all that reading to do up front. Give me some content and context first." Like, don't send me away to do reading, I want some content and context. You give me some stuff. Another one I came across was, "I came to UWS for the on-campus experience and fun. Home is not fun." Another one was, this is from a staff member, "Even my third years won't read stuff unless I do some lectures first." And we're thinking about doing that for first years. And then another one, which is, "I tried online learning and half my class failed. I flipped the classroom and most of my students flipped." That's a slight adjustment from a School of Business quote. And last but not least, "I don't want my student satisfaction ratings to go down if I go online. I'm worried about my student satisfaction ratings." So that's just a kind of few comments I picked up around the place this year from what people have said about online learning. So I'm going to flip to the next slide. So what do you reckon? How can we counter this? Is it true? What are we up to? Jeremy, now you said that you're hearing less of this recently. So
Yes.
tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I think a lot of this. I think a lot of people say this as being they had their wife's cousin's mate ran a blended learning course, and it was like this 5 years ago. Things have moved on. Yeah. To be fair, students do value some face-to-face time, and they do value context prior to reading. But we can do a major level of that, or a major amount of that, in the online environment. Yeah. The trick seems to be not to meet them head on and tell them they're wrong. That doesn't seem to work very well. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you're picking up less of these comments as the year's gone? Geez, that's good news. Okay. Fiona, you're in a school where you might pick up the odd comment about online stuff. Like, tell me some of your experiences.
The experience of people running away because they know I'm a blended learning advisor. We actually have some really great people. We have some people doing amazing things with technology. I see them in a corridor with people who are assessing through Facebook and doing that sort of thing. But we also have other particular disciplines, and it's limited to particular disciplines, who will sit in the lunchroom with one of the blended learning designers and argue until they're blue in the face that it doesn't work, I'm not going to do it. But they're having to do it, so they are sort of doing it a bit. But we have found one of the great things to do is to take someone into the studio and get them to do one of the properly produced podcasts where there is a star on screen, and they're completely converted. We've had some very hard cases go in, and suddenly they get to perform, they're up front, it's well produced, and they're very excited. So that is a good strategy for getting the hard cases online.
Okay, thanks, Fiona.
I think if you are using your Echo 360 and you're making them sit there for an hour and watch those sort of things, I don't think they're happy. But integrating some of the cutting-edge Web 2 technologies, things that I've had success with, VoiceThread, learners boards, things like that, where you can really put lots of multimedia, changing the stimulus, and I've just finished a block of teaching, and the students have loved it, and found it really engaging, stimulating, lots of positive feedback, and they can go at their own pace. So, yeah.
Which subject you teach?
Physical education, human movement.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Cool. No? Yes, go.
I was just going to make a suggestion. I think it's about what you're asking the student to learn. And I think that's the crucial issue, because I come from a background where we have nurses who value things like storytelling and professionalism, and they feel that maybe you have to be face-to-face to learn those kind of things. Whereas actually, if you sort of take a step back and say, sorry, is blended learning appropriate for that? Or maybe it is, excuse me, or maybe it isn't. So I think that's the golden question you have to ask yourself, is I think they do enjoy the flexibility, but particularly first year students, I think like their hands held a little bit, and I think they feel that they can only get that from face to face. And I think maybe that's an issue with some of them.
And that certainly is behind some of the comments I was quoting. Some of the stuff came out of experiences this year, and probably two things that drove those comments. One was people felt they weren't getting enough hand-holding, which is hand-holding, sorry. And the second one was, had we designed a very kind of engaging online experience, which goes to what you were saying. Like, if you just do the Echo 360 1-hour recording, maybe that wasn't the best answer. Yeah, okay. Anything else from students around the place? That good or bad? I'll take good or bad. You can have good or bad. Go on.
Can I just clarify something? You've been talking about online learning, and the comments are about online learning, and yet we're blending. And if you focus on just the online experience rather than how you're using the blend, I just think that there's a lot of attitude to online learning as being an alternative to face-to-face, and the best teachers, the award-winning teachers, use both environments really effectively and use the best features of both. So people like James Irvanatakis and Roy Tasker are using both environments. So when someone says that we want to see the stars, well, that's what the stars are doing.
We're doing online components in the main, and using a mix of both is what we're about, which is important to bear in mind, I think. But it doesn't get us off the hook quite if we don't still do that right, So, yeah.
I just want to follow up on something that Jackie said, which was about first year students wanting their hands held. Do you think as an institution we're doing enough in terms of setting the expectations for our new first years about what studying at UWS is going to be like? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
We've just got our first year nurses to do a reflection piece, and almost every one of them has said it's much harder than I thought it was going to be.
Much harder.
I think universities are very prone to teach students how to study, but they don't teach them how to learn. And I think a lot of universities do that. That we don't say you need to go away and read this, and it's going to take you 20 hours. Just say, for argument's sake, 20 hours. They do feel that they can just pick up a book and read it, and they've learnt something.
Well, they can just come to class, and we will give them the information, and they will go away. We've taught them. They don't grasp that two-way. Yes, you have to engage with this and learn yourself, and identify your learning too.
And it's the expectations, as Susan says, the expectations, and also our student group is not homogenous. We have very challenging issues because we have students with different expectations, experiences, background, education, and things like that. And I sometimes think that people think that you can use the approach to blended or flexible learning is sometimes square pegs and round holes. Not always, obviously, because things do work. Things work very, very well and very, very positive. But I think it's student expectation, I think, comes up again and again.
So what can we do? Do we need to articulate what UWS is about more for future students? Given that next year all first years will bump into, like in the main, blended delivery. That'd be very,
I've been involved in this e-learning area and really blended learning for quite a while in a commercial environment, and it takes quite a long time for people to become used to looking at content online. It also takes quite a long time for the people designing it to integrate it properly as a blended approach. And I think that's probably what we're all having, challenges in terms of, coming to terms with so far. So my suggestion would be, not to give up, hope with the whole thing. I think it'll take a while. Also, you can have the most fantastic content ever available, and unless there's a really good reason for people to look at it, and I know this from the staff point of view or from a commercial point of view, people won't look at it. So if you've got online content integrated in with your courses, and it's not a compulsory component, you must look at this video, you must look at this thing, otherwise sort of don't turn up for class. People just won't look at it, or they'll only get 15-20% of people looking at it, because we find that with the courses that we run. So I think it takes a while.
Okay, it's a time thing. Yep.
Well, I think it's also an infrastructure thing. I mean, it's frustrating if I sit at my desktop here at uni and I want to look something and I got to wait for pages to load. It really is tedious to get to it, and then you want to change it. It's just, it doesn't flow really.
So why does it not flow because of a design reason, or what are you saying?
Well, I said infrastructure, it's too slow.
Oh, the Wi-Fi or the whatever.
Whatever it is, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I don't know how it is for others, but for me it is frustrating.
Yep.
If it's hard to get into, if you have technical problems getting it to work, people just say, this is rubbish, I'm not going to use it. Where people get used to using things like YouTube, and they just click on something, bang, and it starts. And I think that's what we've really got to work towards, things that are really easy for people, for students, to run. Then they come to class and they discuss it, and then they get used to it. I think that's the thing, people getting used to it.
Students are pretty time pressures and things that would be, like I said, at their fingertips. Context is supposed to be, they have to know what they're looking for and know what the content is, and it has to be in context. I agree.
So I was thinking about incentives for staff and students, because I'd be curious from the audience whether the incentives could be for students that they reduce travel time, so they get rewarded in certain ways. And the thought is, has anyone in the room changed their timetable drastically? Because we still, in our school, we have a 1-hour lecture to our tutorial, and it's been a model for a long time. And where we've done away with lectures and made more workshops, that creates quite a dilemma, I think, for timetabling, and the school can't really work it out either. When you see the weeks on the timetable and you go, there's something wrong here. And they said, no, we don't have lectures, we have workshops. So I'm curious about how to capture those incentives for staff and students, where if we free up our time, we have some time for research. If students free up their time, they're here for 3 days, not 5. They can save 8 hours. So I think I'd be curious myself to look a little bit about maybe some brainstorming and scenarios where we could reward staff and students.
I mean, certainly the theory, if not the practice, of us blending is to make things more accessible and more flexible for students, number one, and for staff, in terms of in the end, so that they can get their learning in a time and place that's convenient. Yeah, that's the theory.
It's assessment tasks, because we have, by rule, 3 assessment tasks, but I look at some units and they have between 20 and 40 subcategories. And some units really work them hard, other students walk away with different rewards and experiences, so that learning from others is going to be good.
One of the other challenges of the whole learning design thing is getting the assessment right as part of that process as well, so that we don't kind of hammer our students or hammer ourselves in terms of the assessment, so we get a proper balance. Very good point. Yeah.
Being a distance learning student for many years myself, I think that probably one of the best units I've ever done online was that every single part of the learning that we did was assessment driven. So I take the point of having things, if people don't read it unless there's a reward for it, and that reward is to have a good assessment. And this unit, every single little bit was building up towards the assessment, and it was the most fantastic unit. No lectures, no recordings, but a lot of fun things. So you would put in some light-hearted humour, just a short little clip about something, and it was often very unrelated to whatever we were talking about, but it made it fun and engaging. And he also had a lot of presence by how he would write what we were expected to do. And one of the most important things I think in that particular unit was that it was explicit. everything we needed to do was very explicit. And from doing some of the sunset tools that we do with the units, I've found that some lecturers, not all lecturers, but some lecturers don't actually realise what they're asking their students to do and how much time they're asking their students to do all of these readings or whatever it is. When we break it down into what the student does per week, they start thinking, oh, maybe I should start shuffling this because there's a lot going on. So I think that being explicit is probably a really good thing.
One of my feedbacks in quite a difficult discussion in a workshop around early this year was just because you make things easy for students and you make it interesting and engaging doesn't mean you're dumbing things down. No. so like, because I did have a concession that we can't make it too easy because that means we're dumbing things down. So like, I didn't think that was true. So.
Yeah, conversely, just because you make it more complicated
doesn't
mean that they're learning at
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It just means they're getting frustrated and not learning anything at all.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I was going to change tack slightly. Oh, go on. I won't change tack at all. Go on, carry on.
You've got us on a roll now.
There you go.
Now, one of the issues I was going to say is that what blended learning has done is that it's slightly exposed cracks within the educational system anyway. And that things that maybe we're asking students to do cannot be supported by the way that we're delivering it now. One of the issues I come across frequently is content. We say to students, read 4 chapters of this, do this, do this. But the reality of it is that it's more led by us. So it's actually allowing people to let go of content, because it is content driven and it should be assessment driven. And I think that's what's happening a lot with people, that after years of writing full amounts of content, they're now having to rethink, well, how else do I use a blended learning or face-to-face approach to the learning?
In some cases, academics might feel that the content is there. Is there personification of it?
I think Bill Rankin said, and I thought that was a fantastic thing, he said learning is social. So when you talk about learning, you're talking about the individual. So when you get these SFTs back or SFUs back, and they say, oh, the teacher was crap, I dare anyone not to get teary-eyed and go, oh, it wasn't that bad. Because it's a part of it's an extension of who we are. So I think it's really interesting that, if we associate teaching with us, if somebody comes along and you're perceived as being criticised, that could make you defensive, and things like, only I can teach this unit. You get a lot of that as well.
The trick in all this is, while we want to encourage a lot of flexibility and creativity at the unit and school level, we want to set some overall standards so that people have a good overall experience, across the programs. And I think that's kind of getting that balance right is one of our challenges. Linnea and I went out to various meetings in the schools recently and charted the various issues, and one of the issues was how do you get the balance right between an overall standards, if you like, and local creativity, which is important.
Really, in the end, you've got to have templates, you've got to have some general approaches for developing this sort of content, you've got to have suggested tools to use. And I know that Dennis was talking about not wanting to stifle creativity, and I'd agree, but at the same time, you can get so much creativity, you just have anarchy. And the students, whether they're students in the university or students or end users out there as staff or commercial environment, it's good for them to be able to, it's like, I wouldn't say to copy McDonald's, but people have got to have a repeatable experience for them to trust it. So, still have as much diversity as you can, but try and keep some standards there and have some tools to make it easy for people when they come along new, like new lecturers and so on, that they can take some stuff that's already done and just build on that, and it speeds the whole thing up. So yeah, I reckon a toolkit even for blended learning, that's available, and
we're working on it.
Yeah, I'm sure you would, Linnea, and Tom and the rest of the blended learning team. So, but I can tell you it works. It really does.
I've seen some different examples and experiences with using templates. I feel that it needs to be something that's a sort of a negotiated, a discussed activity, because if you just hand someone a template, there's no ownership there, and they may not want to use those features, and in some instances they just let those features go live, and then you have students clicking on something going, it's not working, and the reason it's not working is because they've not used it. So there needs to be flexibility in the templates as well, and there needs to be that sort of discussion and that ownership and that willingness to be able to have the flexibility to design what will be best for students.
One of the things talked about then, and I think it was James who kind of articulated this first from the kind of the academics point of view, was what he had to come to grips with in the way he changed his practice was being less in control of things, like, you know, that he kind of let loose of the control and then let things happen, like, you know, and really interesting things happen if you don't want to control everything all the time. And that was from the individual academic with students' point of view, like, you know? And I think that's right. And to some extent, blended learning across the university, and certainly iPads across the university, is a kind of a bit of a pathway to being kind of less control generally from the centre in terms of what happens across the place, you know, and more accountability locally, but less control, you know, from the centre, and more creativity, but within a kind of framework, if you like, you know. So that's kind of, I think, where we're heading with blended learning generally, like, you know.